Hello, and welcome to the Builder of Choice Insights podcast, a Shinn Group production. In today's episode, we're talking about leading with technology, and I'm joined by Michael Bergen, co-founder and CEO of Higharc. This is where he is able to blend his background in architecture and AI to transform home designs into intelligent, data-driven systems. He is passionate about helping builders deliver better, more affordable homes by using technology to amplify, not replace, the craftsmanship and care at the heart of the industry. I'm so excited to welcome Michael to join me today. We've had a great conversation. I'd love to have you guys hear a little bit more from Michael yourselves. So welcome, Michael.
Hi, Emma. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. I always love to kick off our podcast with a little story from our guests. So would you tell us a little bit about your background and how you have combined technology and home building and how you got started in that?
Yeah, of course. Some of my favorite things to talk about. I have been focused in the area of computers, programming, artificial intelligence, and the built environment really for as long as I can remember. Started out programming very young, and my dad was a builder, so I spent a lot of time on the job site. And the first 20-ish years of this direction in my career started in grade school, and developing first video game environments, and then I was working on websites. I started my first architecture projects when I was in my late teen years, and then I started to focus on the intersection of programming in buildings, first with using a tool called Revit, which back then was not very well known, but it would, of course, become to be one of the major building design systems that's used in practice today throughout the world. I ultimately worked as an architect. So about 2 years I spent working on one home, and it was a very elaborate home. Remember, it was called the Chirwadi House, and this was in Western Massachusetts. That project was really frustrating for me because there was so much manual work involved in the process. And as soon as we were done with that project, we started a new one that was very similar, but there was very little that we could reuse in that process. And that started my trajectory into applying generative design to the field of architecture. Ultimately, I went to UC Berkeley, where I studied architecture and computer science, and then found my way to Autodesk. While I was at Autodesk, I ended up in the research division and developing tools for artificial intelligence in the context of automotive and aerospace. So we did some really awesome projects at the time, working with the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory on spacecrafts, and developed one of the world's fastest motorcycle at the time, Formula One, a lot of like high performance projects, applying 3D printing manufacturing methods in collaboration with AI. One day, got a call from Mark Miner, my co-founder of Higharc, and he had been trying to build a home and was running into roadblock after roadblock. He spent a lot of money on an architect, and ultimately he failed in that process. He wasn't able to build his home. But we worked both in the 3D printing space, and he reached out to me after reading some work that I had published in graduate school. He wanted to start a company, and so did I. So we started that, brought on 2 others, and from those days, 2018, we were 4 people. Now we're about 170 people today at Higharc. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. And I think it's so interesting. You talked about that you spent 2 years trying to build a house, or on an architecture project, and then you finished that one and then went to the next one, but you couldn't duplicate the process. And I think that's interesting because it's not like building one house to another house. The process is kind of the same, right? So there's systems that are in place. So is that something that from that lesson or that experience, what did you take from that experience to be able to take into what you're doing today?
Yeah, it's hard to reuse knowledge across projects in the built environment. One of the big problems is that every home is different. So the home has to respond to the conditions of the site, for one. And no site is different. There's a lot of builders who try to make sites the same, but it's really impossible unless you have the exact same terrain, you have the exact same solar angle, and you're on the same block, and it's the same home. But then you start to get a different problem where all the homes are exactly the same, and then you can't sell them. You can't differentiate between them, and you create an environment that's not very pleasant for people. So because a home is a product, and a home, when it's built as a product, is always different, you can't reuse methods from manufacturing. You have like your phone, build a billion of these phones, let's say, and they're all exactly the same. So when you look at knowledge reuse and how it's been applied in manufacturing, it's very simple. You have a routine and you execute that routine over and over again. When it comes to housing, you need new technology to enable you to consider all of those inputs to the home building process. And that's how we built the core of our system, is we made it so that you could record knowledge and then apply it to a home so that it can respond to the unique conditions.
Wow, that's very interesting. You talk about the environment, the home building. Now let's talk about the home building environment, because you talked a lot about different types of technology. And as we know, home building has been notorious for not being quick to adapt technology. I think that's the case pretty much for a lot of industries, but in particularly home building, because it's been always a fairly manual process. It's man-made, right? So when you look at today's home building environment, what does it mean for a builder or a leader to truly lead with technology rather than simply adopting tools?
When you think about what's possible with artificial intelligence in the field of software engineering, it's kind of amazing what is possible today versus a year ago. Like, I can do something in an hour that would have taken me a week a year ago. And that is incredible because it makes it so that I can do a lot more. And I can deliver a lot more value to a lot more people. And home building has yet to absorb that impact at large. We're starting to see the early signals of that happening right now. And I believe that it's going to be truly transformative for our industry. I was actually doing some research this morning, and I found that Anthropic, which is one of the frontier artificial intelligence providers, they create Claude, which is a really great system, by the way. They reported that the usage for all of architecture and engineering, not just home building, but the entirety of architecture and engineering, the whole built environment, is about 0.06%. So a very small amount of usage. And by comparison, that same study also reported that biology professors alone use about 1.5% of the artificial intelligence sessions that are processed by them. So this is striking to me because it shows that either the industry doesn't see utility in these systems yet, or these systems aren't capable of satisfying their needs, as in they're asking questions, they're not getting answers that are useful for them. So for one reason or another, we're not seeing that trajectory and adoption. For anyone who's listening and curious about what they can do to advance their own business through artificial intelligence, I would start by asking questions to the AI itself. Because generally these systems are very good at knowing their own capabilities and giving you guidance on how to move forward. Yeah, one last point on that is that when you look at industries overall, there's a chart that gets reproduced every few years that illustrates the productivity that we get per worker. And over the last 50 years, construction has been in a decline. It's one of the few industries that is in a decline over the last 50 years, while other industries, non-farm industries, have experienced a precipitous increase in their productivity. So I think that there's a tremendous opportunity right now and over the next 5 to 10 years to change that pattern and go from a 50-year decline to a sharp increase. And it gets me really excited about doing the work that we do every day.
What do you think contributes to that decline in productivity?
There are many factors. Certainly tools are a major factor. When we look at robotics and its impact in manufacturing, this has become very commonplace. Most automotive manufacturing facilities are just filled with robots executing every process, and it's been optimized down to fraction of a second. When we look at construction sites, you tell me, have you seen a robot in a construction site recently?
No, not at all. In fact, probably the issues with labor has led to a lot of issues with the reduced productivity in construction. The lack of experienced labor, I would say, because I think that there was a lot more, there were a lot more people that went into the trades and apprenticeships than they have, I would say, from Gen X until the Gen Z. It sounds like the Gen Z is starting to look more at the trades than previous generations, but I would imagine that would have a big impact on it.
Yeah, certainly it does. I read a statistic that the average age of a journeyman electrician is something like in their late 50s. So investment is one large issue that is related to this, because you have people who are younger, they're looking at opportunities, and oftentimes they're looking for opportunities that seem like they can advance their situation in life. And I know for myself, growing up on a job site, one of the things that I think my dad wished to impart on me is like, show me the pain of the process so that I wouldn't take that career path. In fact, he encouraged me to take a path where I would become an architect or do something that wasn't in the skilled trades. But I love that type of work. And I think that right now we're going to see a dynamic where artificial intelligence is going to start to take away some of these traditionally what is considered safe, high-income, white-collar jobs. And it's going to create this pressure on the younger generation to go into the trades. That's certainly one of the most insulated or most defensible areas of work that I can imagine over the next 10 years.
Yeah. Do you see technology having an impact on how the younger generation coming into the trades, how will it look different? Do you think that technology will have an impact on how trade work is done, or do you think that will always be very manual, so to speak?
I do think that it will have an impact, but I don't expect that we will have swarms of robots building homes anytime soon. It's a vision that every 10, 20 years, it seems like it has a resurgence and there's a lot of investment in it. But the reality is that building homes is a very difficult process. I know there have been some companies like Icon that does a 3D printed orchestration of the building process. That looks quite interesting. But when you look at the 95% of homes or 98% of homes that are built in the US, I can't remember what the exact number is, but I still think offsite or robotic manufacturing and construction of homes is still far less than 5%.
Yeah. How about the support of the field? Because what you guys do is you're Higharc is a function, an AI function that helps support the home building process. How do you think AI will work in a function to help support the field and make the field maybe more efficient at what they do, or in the scheduling or in the process of what they do, in coordinating all of the trade partners? Do you think that AI has any impact in that space?
Oh, most certainly. Yeah, I think there's about 1 million single-family homes that are built every year.
Mm-hmm.
Our best estimate is that there's about $100 billion in waste every year with this industry. And that waste is waste that we consider open to us. So there's a lot of waste that occurs downstream in the process that, for instance, in the construction of the home itself, that we're not considering in this figure. But just the delays in soft cycle time, the issues that arise when everyone is working from different representations of the same product. So you have your bill of materials that might not align exactly to the construction documents, which might not align exactly to what the buyer has been sold, which might not align to the marketing renderings that are on the website. When we look at these obvious issues, there is a tremendous area of impact where artificial intelligence can make a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that excites me the most in this area is the ability for a home buyer who has a dream of their new home, for them to have influence on how that home will be built. Because I do believe that when you're making a large investment, maybe the biggest investment that you'll make in your life, and if you're not able to have any choice on it, on how it will end up, that's bad. That's bad for you. It's bad for your family. It's bad for your experience of the home over the duration where you'll live in it,
Mm-hmm.
and bad for the community, ultimately, where that home's going to be built. Because maybe there's something that you could have changed that makes it so that it fits your lifestyle better and the experience that you'll have in that home. So the ability for buyers to have a more custom experience, more like what they would get with an architect,
Mm-hmm.
is something that we'll see very soon. And certainly there are builders who are already beginning to offer this experience to their customers with the Higharc technology.
Yeah, it's very cool. And it's similar to one of the things my dad, Chuck, that one of our founders, my parents, the founders of Shinn, there's a couple things that you said that resonate so well with kind of the philosophy we've had since the 60s. And one is that there should be a single source of truth. Chuck has always said that the schedule should be the backbone of the organization. And when the buyer comes into your office to buy a home, their experience should be consistent from the time they buy their home all the way through warranty. The information should flow freely, and it should be just one clean system. There shouldn't be all these offshoots of it. And they were trying to do that in a manual format back in the 60s and 70s, and as computerized as possible as the computers came online in the 80s. But the other thing you talked about is making it so you can make it customizable, and it may not be fully custom, but it's personalized to the buyer, right? And one of the examples that Chuck always uses is that you can go online to buy a car, and you can trade out different things, and it's personalized to the person buying it. But because there's a system in the background that's working and knowing how all the pieces fit together, it's a seamless process for the manufacturer. So you can order color, you can order the kind of seats you want, leather, fabric, whatever, sunroof, different, how many doors do you want, whatever. You can customize it specifically for you. And it sounds like you want to create that environment for the home buyer to have a seamless environment where from the beginning they come in to the completion of the home, and being able to customize or personalize, depending on the home builder, personalize their experience.
Yeah, exactly. there's a couple great anchors for what you just described I'd love to walk through. One is the earliest building information modeling systems date back to the 1960s, or this conception where we should have a single source of truth for a building.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually written by Douglas Engelbart, who invented the mouse, the computer mouse.
Wow.
Yeah, he had a system called the building description system, and that was in the early 1960s that outlaid this vision that we're still working towards. So there was a lot of great ideas at that time, but we didn't have the technology to bring it to fruition. When you talk about the automotive assembly line and the manufacturing process for cars, draw an analogy to home building. Have you ever seen a plan set on a job site where the plans were actually inverted, or they were mirrored?
Oh, yes.
Right?
Uh-huh. Yep.
And then you see vignettes or portions of the building, and there's some of them that are circled, and they say, oh, we're going to build this one on this home.
Uh-huh.
And then there's some X's through it in different places. So imagine, if you will, that you went to buy a new Toyota, and you went to the website and made all your choices, and you saw what you're looking for. And then you went to purchase the home. Now, we fast forward a few weeks, and then we get to the assembly line, manufacturing plant. And what is delivered to them is analogous to what we see in home building.
Right.
It's like, oh, this car is actually going to be mirrored. We're making this one. We're going to send this one to Europe. So the driver's side is going to be on the other side. And, we're going to add a couple seats. So let's cross this out and put these seats here. And then they assemble it in the same way that we would a home. And it's kind of a funny analogy, but you could see that there are big problems with the way that our industry historically represents this content.
Mm-hmm.
It's not data. It's just drawings on paper. And you're dependent on a lot of skilled experts and kind of a lot of hope.
Interpretation.
Indeed. To make sure that you get the final product that you expect. So that's the problem that we work to solve, is to make homes into data and then be able to rely less on interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, we generate the outputs that are required for each of those groups.
Yeah.
Purchasing group and the field, the buyers, keep everybody on the same page.
Yeah. And there's your waste, because if you are building something by interpretation, and I use this example all the time, when my husband and I went to buy the house that we're living in right now, we bought in the early 2000s, where the built-in thing in the family room was really cool, where there would be a hole for the TV and then some weird shelves and everything like that. And I was like, no, I do not want that. I want just a flat wall. So we paid extra for just a flat wall, but I'm sure the plans went out as they go, because we bought from a production home builder. I'm sure they went out as they go. And because I'm a home builder's daughter, I felt privileged enough that I should be able to walk on the job site. And I walk in there while they're framing, and I'm like, they're doing the built-in. They're doing the built-in. Take it out. Take it out. But I mean, I can't even imagine if I had it, and maybe somebody else would have checked it before they did anything else, I would assume. But it would have been so disappointing for me to move into my house where I wanted a flat wall. And they didn't, because they didn't have, as you said, data points. They had something that was out there. Probably they crossed off, don't do this instead. And they just went through and just kind of like robots and just did it the way they just do it all the time, without having a real plan for my specific home on the spot.
Yeah. This many such cases. This is kind of more of the expectation than the exception. And there are downstream effects of that. You have your variance now, you have to rip out what you've done. That's affecting your schedule. As a buyer, now you're going to want to visit the job site more, not less, because you're eroded trust in the builder and the expectations that you had. And Wow. There are a lot of problems when it comes to this. I think your situation is, maybe better than it typically is. I have heard builders who have relayed to me that they've had to re-pour a foundation 3 times on the same home because of this issue, and yeah, it gets to an enormous level of waste.
Yes.
Avoidable. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes. We could go down that rabbit hole for hours because having not good plans is a huge issue. And so being able to convert that to data and spit out the plans that's exactly specific for that particular home and that particular lot is a big thing. I do want to ask you some questions though. There was one thing that I thought was very interesting in our conversation that we had a few weeks back. You talked about leaders need to distinguish between problems that are functional and problems that are cultural, and trying to fix those things with technology and especially AI. Can you speak a little bit more about that? Because I thought that was very profound, particularly coming from somebody who's coming from the tech world, and everybody just assumes that you would think because your technology, all problems can be fixed with technology. So I'd really love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, this is something I think about a lot because, at Higharc, we're a software company. We sell software, but our mission is to build better homes. And we don't build homes. So the only way that we can execute on our mission is with our partners, with builders, and by empowering them. And Higharc is also not a software that you can just buy and turn on and say, oh, I bought the software, like we're good. No, it's a change management process because you have to take the inertia of an existing process, which is very complicated. And you have to have the commitment and the right people, the right patterns of execution developed so that you can change how you operate. And that is both a technical problem, but mostly a behavioral problem. Because you have a culture that is used to doing things one way. And if your boss comes in and says, hey, I've decided that we're going to do it a different way, that can be challenging. It's hard to give up what you know, what you're comfortable with, what you're an expert in, and change it, especially to teach an AI, let's say, to do a portion of your job. But I think that's a skill set that's really important right now. And both the builders that I see and across industries, the pattern that I see that's most common amongst organizations that are taking advantage of these new tools is the ability to do that and become very good at doing that. Tools are changing very fast. There are, I guess, to put a fine point on your question, there are technical problems such as I want to analyze all of the homes that I have that are coming up over the next 2 months, and I want to build a forecast for my purchasing. As long as you have good data, we can express that type of problem to an AI system along with the data, and we can expect that we'll get a pretty good answer. Then there are behavioral problems like how do I get my salespeople to stop offering non-standard options?
Yes.
An AI can give you some good guidance on how you might go about doing that, but this is a cultural problem, right?
Yeah.
And solving it is not going to be addressable by AI. It is more in the class of getting everybody together, getting them on the right page, and establishing metrics, objectives, training programs to validate like why you must do this, and then staying, really close to that process, making sure that you can achieve your vision.
Yeah. And I love that you used the word why. That was we just got done with our executive summit. And that was one of the things that we talked about throughout the whole thing was that you need to get buy-in, or you not necessarily buy-in, but you need your team to be on the same page. And buy-in is very important, but it's not the only thing. But the most important thing is to kind of get through the why. Why are we doing this? Why is it a big enough thing that it requires you to participate? But the why behind it, because then you really get people involved in understanding how they can make a difference, even in their own process. Because a lot of times, one of the things we talked about is that sometimes people won't do stuff because they don't see it's going to be more of a problem for them than it is actually going to be a benefit for them. And so really going through that and helping them understand how a new technology or new system, a new process is going to make not only your job better, but the whole entire company better. It's going to make it more favorable to the customer. You're going to be able to do your mission of the organization better, of building homes for people in a more efficient and effective manner.
Yes. The back to the analogy we just gave. So when we're trying to get our salespeople to stop selling non-standard options, if we invert that, maybe there's a different way to look at it. Maybe we make it so that all of our options are standard.
Yeah.
And then we can start to turn this into a technology problem, and we can remove the behavioral uncertainty, which is definitely a risky area.
Yes, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that distinction and the idea of the culture and bringing everybody on board and bringing everybody into the same place and understanding the why behind a change. Another thing we talked about, which I think is really interesting, and I think particularly the older, well, I'm not going to say that because it's everybody does this, but the tribal knowledge that so many companies have. Mm-hmm. And I think this is something, when we talked, it's something that you're like, this is something we want to try to address, because no company can grow or scale when people are holding on to specific knowledge. Like, we do this but it's not documented. It's not expressed anywhere except for in somebody's head. So what do you think what responsibilities do leaders have to operationalize and distribute this knowledge? And how is a tool like yours helpful?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with what we've done to make it possible to store and reuse knowledge, because that's something we've invested a lot in over the years. We have several thousand their properties that can be reused across homes in the Higharc system. And that required us to do a lot of engineering and really thinking about, how do we represent buildings as data and homes as data in particular? So this is everything from your eave extensions versus your rake extensions, and your fascia trim settings, and the exterior trim that you put on windows, and whether you put trim on the front of the windows of the home or on the side, and what you do on corner lots. So all this knowledge, right now, which might exist in somebody's head, it might be in a binder that hasn't been updated in 2 years. It is then going to be modified by, depending on where you build, you have your architectural review board requirements, you have code requirements. So we built the infrastructure to allow that data to be recorded in one place. And with artificial intelligence systems, what we can now do is take that binder, or maybe it's a PDF if you're lucky, and we can automate or semi-automate the process of analyzing that document and then turning it into data. Because if it's not data, that is, if it's just written in a binder, or if it's in somebody's head, then we can't change it systematically across the business. And that introduces a lot of risk, where a lot of the waste comes from across our industry. In general, it is now possible, even if you just go to an AI, I would recommend Claude or OpenAI's ChatGPT, if you're using these tools right now. And you can simply ask the system to interview you after you have illustrated some information about your business, about what knowledge should be recorded and how you can go about doing that. And then starting to upload some of the knowledge that you have stored and develop a gradually improving point of view on your business and how the knowledge across your business is recorded as data or not.
Wow, that's pretty incredible.
It is, yeah.
Very helpful, because part of the reason why there's tribal knowledge is because it's too much for somebody to sit down and write all those things down and actually document them. They don't have time. I don't have time to do it. So I'm going to keep it all in my head and keep doing it, not giving it to anybody else.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, we did this in our business last week. So we had the entire company for 3 days. They did we call it a hackathon in software. But the job for everyone to do was to create a skill that, and a skill is it's a file. It's just like a text document that you can use in different AI systems that represents tasks and work that they do that we feel can be automated. It was pretty remarkable what the team came up with, and every group. So the marketing team had developed new AI solutions, and the sales team and the finance team and our operations team, and pretty amazing to see. And I think that same strategy or methodology is useful for any business today.
Absolutely. Yeah. Last week, it's funny. Last week at our event, we talked a lot about leadership, and something that you're talking about there is where you are really utilizing the knowledge that your team has instead of dictating the knowledge to your team. And you're giving them the opportunity to share what's important and the process they're using, so that they can make the whole system better, instead of kind of, a lot of times, it's interesting with leadership, the way leadership has been in the past, where it's like there's one person who dictates everything through the system without really getting a whole lot of feedback. And so we're kind of in this space now where a lot of older leadership is moving on, and new leadership is coming in. And something like what you just did last week is very inspiring, because I think more leaders need to take advantage of that in any operation, because that's where, you get tribal knowledge out of everybody's heads and into a system where you can kind of go, okay, now how do we create a system where this works? Or let's put it into data, as you say, and then really fine tune things. So I think that's a really great process that you went through. What, now that you have that, so I'm going to play a little bit. I'm going to ask you, now that you've had everybody do that, what's the next step from there? Now that they've done a dictation of what their process is.
Yeah. So we had presentations at the end of last week where everyone gave a result of their project, and the progress was so impressive over the course of 3 days that we decided to extend that over the next week and really forever. But it's a transition period where our team has developed amazing skills and expertise on their own. And at the rate that our business is growing, it's required for us to think outside the box and consider how we individually can do 2 times as much or 4 times as much or 10 times as much. And the tools are coming along as kind of the wind in our sails. So now we're integrating these tools across the business, and we use a system called Claude Cowork to do that, where the skills are now published to a storage area inside of Cowork, So anyone can use them across the business. So now, instead of having to go to someone on the marketing team to review an article that we're considering to put on the website as a blog post, we have a skill. So you can simply describe what your idea is for the blog post. You can get a review of whether that is something that is aligned with the general trajectory that we're taking in terms of messaging. It's just one example of many, but
that is very cool. That is very cool. I love it. I love that. One question with that, because I'm sure people are curious. What about security with some of the things that you're putting into to Claude or whatever system you use, whether it's Copilot or Gemini or ChatGPT, whatever system you're using? Are there things that you should not put into your AI, or how do you protect because you're obviously putting in things that are very specific to your organization, you probably don't want out in the world, right? So how do you protect that?
Well, if you're using the free version of these systems for business use cases, I would recommend against that. When you're doing that, you are implicitly providing your approval for that system to use your data in their training systems. And the tools aren't necessarily that expensive. They're about $20 a month for the basic account or pro account within these systems. And once you do that, you should go to the settings and ensure that your data, the ability for the AI provider to use your data is disabled, which is quite easy to do. So go ahead and take a look at your settings. As far as when that restriction from the provider to use your data is in place, then these systems are using the same infrastructure as Amazon and as Google. And I would treat, especially for the major providers, Google, OpenAI, and Anthropic, I would treat it the same. So that data, you should use the data that you have that's available and get the results out of it that are going to help you. And don't be necessarily afraid of moving forward in that direction. I'll say one more thing here, which is that home building is a very, 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 very small percentage of the use cases here that AI is interacting with. We talked about the entirety of architecture and engineering being 0.06% of those interactions. And the way these systems work, they require a large volume of data before they're able to create useful output for you on the other side. So that's an advantage that we have at Higharc, because all of our work is on home building, and we train models that work on homes and in the home building context. But I say that to both give you some confidence in moving forward, but also if the systems aren't giving you perfect information, there's a reason for that.
Because they don't have any.
Yeah.
It's very limited. Oh, wow. Well, let me ask you one last question. If you could, leaving us today, what are some things that you would like to say that you hope people take away from our conversation today with regards to leadership and technology? What are the most important things that you think home builders need to be focusing on when it comes to those two things, and how to integrate that into their businesses, how to get people to, it's kind of a complicated question, but if you can summarize it all into like 3 or 4 sentences, but how do you get your team to be part of it? How do you maintain your leadership ability to make sure you're leading your team in the right way with technology, and understanding that piece where you talked about culture, behavior, and the technology problem, and really understanding the difference between the two.
Yeah. Right now, there are a lot of people out there who are excited about what's happening in the field of artificial intelligence. They're digging in and they're using it for more and more things that make their lives easier. And maybe they're finding new hobbies or ways to do things that they couldn't do before because they're augmented by a robotic partner, which is pretty cool. There are also people who have fear and trepidation over artificial intelligence because it's happening very fast. And I've been studying this field for 15 or more years, and I've become comfortable with the pace. I would encourage leaders on both of those axes to try to develop a sensibility and a point of view where you can reinforce and relieve some of the anxiety for people who are feeling fear and trepidation. Or if you have fear and trepidation, maybe just reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you and give you some advice on how to go forward. And then celebrate and reinforce the people who are excited about this transition in technology and give them the tools and empowerment to really push it as far as you can go, because I think that's something that's really important right now. As far as what's important for listeners, if you're in the home building space, we're sitting at the edge of what is going to be a transformation in this industry. And this industry needs transformation.
Yes.
Right? 50 years of decline in productivity. And there's a housing crisis. We're at a 2 million home deficit right now, conservatively. The cost of homes, higher than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Most people in most major metropolitan areas cannot afford a home on the median income. This problem, as it gets worse, is catastrophic for our society and for our culture. And if you have a position where you can be a leader in adoption of AI technology in the context of home building, there is an incredible amount of leverage and advantage that you can gain right now until this transition is completed. So educate yourself. You're listening to this podcast, a good place to start. And dig into the resources that are available to you. If you are interested in what adoption could look like for your industry, or your business, we have a lot of people who would love to talk to you at Higharc. Maybe Higharc's not a fit for you now. I am confident that eventually it will be. If you build a home, you'll build it with Higharc on the same time horizon. Earlier is better. But we're also just happy to talk and share our knowledge and learn more about your business and connect you with the right people throughout the industry. Folks like Emma and her team. So.
Oh, well, thank you so much. That's like a mic drop right there. That's so true. Everything you said is so true. And we are in a transformation. It is time to kind of start paying attention. We've been watching long enough, and technology is only going faster and faster and faster. And we need to be able to build more homes more affordably, because there are a lot of people who really desire to be in a home and they can't, because it just is not possible. And so I think you're right. With the adoption of new technology and new processes and new thinking, we can start solving these problems at a higher level. So.
Very much agree.
Michael, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking with you again. Your knowledge and your wisdom is just phenomenal. And I'm so happy that you were able to share it with me and with our listeners today. And I hope they took home some good nuggets. So thank you for joining me, and I look forward to having you again in the future.
Thanks, Emma. Yeah, I'd love to interview you.
Anytime. Well, thank you so much. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching or listening. Give us a like and leave a comment. And if you thought of somebody, be sure to send them a link so they can listen too. As always, we'd love to hear your feedback. Is there a specific topic or special guest that you want to hear about? Let us know. Did you like what you heard? Then I've got great news for you. You can listen to this episode along with many more at Builder of Choice Insights, where I talk with industry experts on crucial concepts that help builders become the builder of choice. If you don't want to miss this next episode, then be sure to turn on your notifications, hit that like button, and subscribe.